Hello, this is another episode of Natives Podcast. I'm Harry MacArthur. I'm here with Bob Thornton, and we have a surprise guest this week, and I'm so happy that he went to school with my daughter. His name is Ethan Heitner, and it's very exciting to have him reach out and give his story, and this is just what we're all about, and this is so exciting, and I hope he tells his entire story, because I'm gonna be probably emotional over this, because you've seen him from such a young age. At what, seventh grade?
Seventh grade. Yeah.
Seventh grade, yeah. So, yes, so excited. And here's Ethan. Okay, maybe we'll have Bob. Do you want to start it off, or do you want to?
Sure.
Let's start off.
All right, let's go. Let's get into it.
Okay.
Okay.
We've got handsome Ethan here,
Thank you.
22 years old.
23.
23. Yeah. You see, when you're young,
Yeah.
you want to push that age
Yeah,
up. And
yeah.
when you get old like me and Harry, you want to push that age
Yeah.
down. We stopped doing the 23 and a half.
Yeah.
So we had a little bit of a chance to talk. You are extremely interesting
Thank
and
you.
well-versed. And I was hoping that maybe we could start off with when you started, what your early development was,
Yeah.
what your family life was.
Yeah, so family life for me was always, it was never normal, growing up. So I was born, my birth parents were drug addicts. And it was really weird because you never knew them. And I had faint memories of them when I was younger. And as I got older, I can still think back and remember, going to the rehab facility and going to see my birth mother and going to Walmart. That's the only thing I hung on to for 15 years or so. So the aspect of family for me, and this is one thing that I wrote about in my college essay, was I never understood it. And I was blessed with the parents that I have now, my mom and dad. And when I was younger, 4, 5, 6 years old, they told me that she was sick. But when I was 7, they told me what really happened, that she was an addict and that she chose that path in life. And that was really weird to grasp as a 7-year-old. You don't really, when you're 7, you're sitting there and thinking about school and, playing soccer after school, or whether you're going to see your friends on the weekend or if you can have ice cream after dinner. But for 7, 8 years, every night you'd go to bed wondering who she is, where is she,
Wow.
and it was never something that I talked to my parents about because they lived through the times with her that were bad, right? And they felt bad for what happened to me with being born with 1 arm and 3 fingers. And, I never wanted to put that, I thought it was a burden to talk to them about it, to say, man, I just want to know who she is. I want to know where she is. I want to know who I came from and who I am to the core. But, and I've talked about this with friends and, now family, not that much family, because when I talk about it with them, I like to talk about it. But when they talk to me about it, it's an uncomfortable topic when you
Yep.
talk about it with family. But for 8 years, every single night for 2 hours, an hour, I would lay there and just wonder why. Why did she choose this? Why did they choose this? And why did they leave? And that happened 7 years old, and I think I was 8 or 9, and she actually sent a card to my dad for his birthday. And I sent her a card back, and she just shipped it right back. So that was when I kind of realized, okay, now I'm 8. So I'm like, this is how it's going to be, and growing up, I always wondered, why did this happen to me? Why me? Out of everyone out there, there's 8 billion people out there. And I understand there's other people out there that have the exact same problem, have had family problems like this. And, I remember a girl that used to go to school with us, and I won't say her name, but she had the same, family life. And she was the one person that I could talk to about it that understood, because my mom would try to talk to me about it. My dad would try to talk to me about it. Grandparents, you name it, they try to talk to me about it. And I always said, you will never understand.
Can't
You can't get it.
Yep.
She understood part of it. But as I got older, 12 years old, 13 years old, it was always a thought, right? I kind of started to move past it. I accepted what happened. And when I was 14 or 15, my mom finally said, I was sitting in my room one day and she came in and, we were talking about my birth mom. And I said, at least you got to know who she was. I never got to meet her. She left when I was 3 years old, 4 years old. I only had one memory, and it was the memory of going to Walmart. That was it. And she kind of froze. And at that time, it all came very clear to me. That is her daughter. She knows where her daughter is. So she says, I do know where she is. And 2 days later, we're in the car to go meet her. Now, that car ride was interesting, right? Because for 14 years, every night, I thought about the time that I would meet her and what I would say to her. And all the things mentally and physically and, just battling through that, every night for 7-8 years, just wondering, like, where is she? Who is she? What is she doing? Is she still alive? I don't even know if she's alive or not. Mm-hmm. And I always said, when I get to meet her, I am going to just rip into her. She has caused so much pain and so much heartbreak for me and my family. I am just going to give it to her. So we get up there and we get to her house, and I walk up these, she got 3 steps going up to her house in Orlando, knock on the door, and my heart's beating out of my chest. And my little brother comes to the door. And, this is all new to me. I'm like, what's going on? So he opens the door and I look up and there she is. For the first time ever, I meet her. And we go out to lunch and, her and I really don't talk that much at lunch. We go back to her house and my mom is like, okay, I'll take your brother in the car. You can go sit and talk to her. So we go into her house. We go into the kitchen or to the living room. And she goes, you can say whatever you want to me. So I sit back and I think about, what can I say? I have 14 years of just sad, it's just pent up and it's ready to come out. But in my head, I say, who am I to judge you? I can't, it's not going to make me feel better. If I curse you, if I yell at you, if I say that you're the worst thing ever, and I walk out of here, it's not going to change the fact of the past 14 years that have happened. So I said to her, I said, I have nothing to say. I just want you to be better for him. That's it. And, leaving there,
wow,
it was relieving. And my mom said, what'd you say to her? I said, I didn't say anything. We caught up about school and soccer and anything like that. But I saw someone who is struggling and has made bad decisions. But at the same time, like I said, who am I to judge? Because I've made poor decisions too that have affected people. And maybe her decisions affected me physically and mentally and my family mentally. But she is trying to be better. And I know that she feels bad about what happened to me. And I know that she would go back and change it. So who am I to sit there and say, you're the worst thing that's ever happened to me. Look what you did. It's not going to be right for her. And I know walking out of there, if I did that, I would want to walk back in and say, I'm sorry, because when I saw her, that's my biological mother, and like we said about the aspect of family was really weird growing up because my mom is my grandma and my dad, I have no blood to, so it was really weird. I had a different last name. I didn't call them mom or dad for a while, always with the thought of, okay, she'll get better. She's sick. I'll go back and live with her. So that was really, really weird. And the best part about the whole thing is about a week later, I get a DM on Instagram saying, hey, do you want to meet your biological dad?
Oh my gosh.
So it all happened in a week, all of it. And I was in 10th grade at the time. And, it was difficult, definitely going to school and talking mm-hmm. to people and,
They can't relate.
No.
Nobody's in the same zip code.
No. And my close friends knew, right? They knew what was going on. You know, I've grown up with a handful of them, so I was 3 years old. So they lived through some of this, and, you know, their parents knew. And I was actually talking to my mom the other day, and we were talking about, you know, my birth mother. And when we were in high school and maybe, you know, we had a couple of drinks here and there, you know, just, you know, stupid kids, our friends, their moms or their dads would tell my mom, they're like, you must be terrified that he can end up just like her. And I always wanted to prove them wrong, right? When it was, I always wanted, my whole thing was, I always wanted to prove my birth mom wrong for leaving. So, you know, with soccer and with school and with doing other things, you know, I always, in the back of my head, wanted to say, this is what happened after you left. And as I got older, I realized that if I keep on living this way, I'm giving her the power, right? I'm doing it for her and to show her, but not doing it for me. And now, you know, we talk every now and then. You know, I don't think I'll ever have a relationship with her. Same thing with my biological father. He turned his life around. You know, he did.
Wow.
He, you know, construction company, has a family, and, you know, it's kind of just checking that off. You know, I personally don't think that they really want that much to do with me. And I think it's pretty, I think the feelings are mutual there.
There you go.
You know, where it's just, okay, you know, here we are, we talk, you're good, I'm good. That's it.
Wow. That is absolutely incredible. And your mom, when she told you that your mother was sick, your biological mother was sick, she wasn't lying.
No.
It is an illness.
It is.
And the fact that she would be pregnant and continue to use shows that it was something but that she was down the rabbit hole. And I know it hits home. My daughter is a drug addict.
Yeah.
It has suffered since she was in high school. My granddaughter lives with us. So, and the things that she's been through, it's hard for her to find kids that she can relate to, just like you said. So, but man, what an incredible 14-year-old you were to meet her and understand all of that. I mean, at 14, I think I was putting Elmer's glue on my hands and peeling it off. I wasn't solving, you know, how to be a better human being. It's absolutely incredible. And so you were about 3 years old when you got your mom and dad.
Yeah.
And it's just been...
Oh, it's been great. So one of my first memories ever, right, was going to family court and changing my last name. And so,
how old were you?
I was 4.
And you remember it?
I remember it. I remember the toys, all of it. And, you know, growing up, you feel a level of jealousy that people got to, you know, be with their biological parents. You know, this is... They're your blood, they're this. And you come to find out, especially as I got older. So my dad's going to be 80 in December. And he retired the year after I was born. And he gave up his retirement years to raise me. So, and same thing with my mom. So, you know, she's in her 60s and they gave up their late years. You know, my dad came from nothing at all. He moved down here, he's a chiropractor. You know, moved his parents down here. He loved to fish. He realized, I need to move here. So he started his practice here, moved here, built what he built, and he was ready to retire. And when I came around and they realized that she couldn't take care of me, they were there to, you know, do it. And, you know, that's another part of when I say, like, I feel like talking to him about it is like a burden, right? And when I want to prove her wrong, but them right, because you do feel a level of pressure when someone gives up their retirement years to raise you.
Absolutely.
You know, so if you mess up in school or you do something, you know, dumb in life, and you really look at yourself in the mirror and say, am I making the right decisions? Because these people who chose to raise me, they could be traveling the world, they could be doing whatever they want, but they chose to do this, and they chose to raise another kid after what just happened with my biological mother. But, you know, I owe them everything. And they know that, you know, I feel that way about them. And we don't really talk about it like that. We're not really a like I love you family. It's more actions. And I know that, they gave up so much for me, and I live my life every day just trying to make the right decision. So one day, they can feel comfortable with, saying that they did a good job, because I know that they feel bad for what happened. And I know they take a lot of it on themselves for what happened to me with her. And I tell them all the time, it's not on you. You did what you could. She unfortunately went down that way and that path. It's not your fault. And they've done amazing. They're very understanding. Given, my mom will agree to this. When I was younger, she was a little bit of a helicopter, right? She didn't want,
Understandably.
she didn't want me to turn out, like that. And, she admits it. She realized that, and I made my mistakes, and, I didn't go down that path. Everyone makes their mistakes when they're growing up, and, but for me, it was, I'm never going to even come close to anything that she did. So.
Now,
well, didn't you always made good grades in school, didn't you?
Here and there, Here and
I thought you did.
Here and there. No, I did. I think high school for me was, I was very soccer focused in high school and sports focused. And, I was playing club and started playing varsity with like a few of the other guys in my grade in 7th and 8th grade. So we were very sports focused. And, like I was telling you earlier, fishing was, and still is, my only thing that's on my mind. So there was a lot of times where I'd be in study hall watching YouTube fishing videos. But as I got older throughout high school, I kind of realized, oh, wow, we really have to, get in on this. And, B's are good. And, we need to maintain A's and B's and go for it. So, school was fun. I like school.
Do you like fly fishing, or what kind of fishing do you like?
So inshore fishing is mainly what I do.
Yeah.
Snook and tarpon. I do offshore fish quite a bit, but I have a 22-foot center console, so I get out during the summer. Now I have friends that have 72-foot Viking or 36-foot center console or whatever. So we'll go offshore and fish that. But inshore, that's my thing. Snook, tarpon, redfish occasionally when we still get them in Stewart because we have no more seagrass left. But that backcountry mangroves, that's peace.
That's your heaven.
Magic.
That's it.
Magic.
Yeah.
So Ethan, I'd like to put a different spin on they gave up everything.
Yeah.
Their retirement for you, because I bet what's your grandfather's first name?
Arnie.
I bet if we had Arnie in here and he was sitting in your seat, he would talk completely different about raising you.
Yeah. No, he would.
And I had a career as a financial advisor. And one of the things that I noticed, and I was a young man, and I would help these people get all the way to their goal. They couldn't wait to retire. And they would retire and kind of go stagnant. Mm-hmm. And within 3 years, the husband would usually pass away.
Yeah.
And now Arnie's 80 years old, and he probably has a big smile on his face.
No, he does.
And what did you tell me earlier? Arnie is your...
So he's my father, but
no, but he's your best friend.
Yeah, he's my best friend. Yeah, no,
and that's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Pretty magical.
Yeah.
If he were resentful, he would definitely not be your best friend.
Yeah, no, him and I mean, he taught me how to fish. You know, so growing up, when we'd go offshore, we'd go fish inshore. We'd go fish, and he would let me catch the fish until I turned about 13, 14 years old, and then it started to turn around. I was taking the boat out by myself every day, and I was learning new things, and then we go out together now, and it's, oh no, I want you to catch fish. I want to see you catch the fish. And he, and with my mom too, he's my best friend. We big football fans. We watch the Dolphins every week, unfortunately. And
we'll get there.
Yeah.
We'll get
there. Oh yeah. But that's our conversation all the time. And that's one thing I've always appreciated about him. When anyone in the family needs some advice, whether it's life advice, financial advice, whatever it may be, they go to him. And I realized that growing up, and I said, I'm living with him. I can go to him, and 99% of the time, him and I talk as just good friends. It was never that, we never had the father-son talk. It was always, when I messed up, it was a man-to-man talk. It was no sugarcoating it. It was, you're really screwing this up. You need to do better, or you won't be able to do this. And I always appreciated brutal honesty, because when I was 7 years old, they told me about my life and they told me the truth of that. And I'd rather you give it to me. You know, if I don't want you to say no offense, I just want you to tell me how you feel. And he would always choose the right times to do it. You know, we'd be on the boat, we'd be fishing, be like, hey, you know, you got to get your grades up. You know, you got to do better here. You have to do better here. If you want to reach your goal, then you need to start working now. And he would really, you know, tell me where life could go if I stayed on a certain route. And I appreciated that. And even now when we talk, it's, you know, now that I'm older, you know, we can have, you know, better discussions about, you know, life or, you know, finances and stuff like that. But with him, it was always, you know, he's my best friend. And, you know, he's the one that, you know, I could talk to if I felt like I wanted to talk about this. You know, my mom too, you know, she's there, and you know how moms are. They're always checking in on you, making sure everything's good. And especially about this topic, she would always check in and she'd always say, you know, how are you feeling with this? You know, I know she's been reaching out. How's that? And Mom, I'm good, you know? And I think a lot of that stems from being 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 years old and dealing with this on my own, right? I never talked to him about any of it. I think for 7 years, 8 years, they thought I was perfectly fine. And I would say now I was the furthest thing from fine, right? Because when you're 8, 7 years old, you should not be going to bed thinking about this stuff and wondering. And now that I'm older, I see some of the residuals of it, right? So like birthday parties or gifts. I don't like it. I don't. I really, and I know some people say, you know, I don't like, you know, being the center of attention, but for me, it's really weird because my whole mentality growing up was the people who are supposed to love you, they just left. And now when people choose to drive out of their way, spend their money, get you a gift, and I receive it, it makes me feel sick. I don't know how to process that. And even with, you know, friends or girlfriend, it's really weird to think that they're choosing to be there and accepting that they're not going to leave like how she did. And it took a while to get to that point, you know, and especially now with my girlfriend now, she knows, you know, all of this. And I told her, and I said, look, like there are some days where, you know, I don't want a birthday party. I don't want Christmas. I don't want to be the center of attention. I'll give you what you want. You know, it's not the fact that, you know, I don't like your gifts. It's not that I don't like your attention. I don't like, you know, being with you. It's just really, really sickening to me to feel that feeling of people that choose to be there and choose to do these things for you. And it's, when I talk about it, people think it's sad. You know, they say, oh man, you should.
I understand.
And, you know, my whole life, and this is one thing that I told her, you know, because when she, you know, she's 20 years old and, you know, she deals with her things and everything. And I tell her, I say, look, you can come to me about anything. You know, anyone can. You know, if you've experienced it, you know, come talk to me, right? I can, trust me, I can handle what you're about to say, and we can talk about it. But I told her one day, I said, you know, I want you to come to me about these things. I want you to talk to me about these things because I've experienced life at 7.
Yeah.
And another thing that I kind of struggled with was kind of protecting the people that I cared about, right? From the truths of life. And I realized that I wouldn't get to where I was without just going through it, you know, and understanding that this is what happens and how am I going to make it out of the end of this. And I told my dad, this was a few years ago. It was a pretty dark time. There was a moment where it got pretty dark. It was, you know, sophomore year of college. You know, a lot of things happened in that short amount of time. And, you know, I had a girlfriend at the time, and her and I broke up, and, you know, I went straight back into the mentality of my birth mom, right? She left.
Abandonment,
exactly. And I felt like, you know, I went to school, I wasn't playing soccer at the time, and, you know, I said, I have her, I have soccer, I have home. Well, now I'm at school. I don't have soccer, I don't have her, and I don't have home, which is, you know, my friends,
fishing.
family,
Foundation.
and, yeah, my fishing. And usually, I go out on the boat, go fish the docks for an hour, watch the sunset, and everything's fine. And I made some pretty, bad decisions during that time, said things that I didn't mean. And a lot of it was, it just felt like that jar was opening of, at that point, 19 years of this, so I realized after that, okay, like I need to go home. And my roommates at the time, they said, look, man, just go home for the weekend, And I talked to my dad and we were just talking about it. And I said, I'm going to change my mentality on this. And, when you're going through something, you have to go through it. It can't go through you. And this thing was just going through me. And, I wasn't going to class. I was, going to sleep at 8 o'clock in the morning, waking up at 6, couldn't sleep at night. It was pretty bad, but it's all mentality and how you look at it. And, I always lived my life before and now, especially when I was a kid, I said, oh, why, but I'm never going to get an answer why. There is no why. There is no. So it's all mentality. And I believe that I was made like this for a reason. Right. And I've been lucky enough to do amazing things. I got to film a fishing video with Scott Martin, a professional bass fisherman. It's like, 700,000 subscribers on YouTube. Yep. I wouldn't have got that opportunity if I didn't have one arm, Florida Sportsman Magazine, stuff like that. So changing your mindset on, why is this happening or why did this happen to, you play the cards you're dealt in life. Yeah. And my parents always said you were dealt a pretty bad hand, but you made do. And, even though, I'm 23 and I've gotten over the hump of things are always still going to be there.
Absolutely. Always
and
will be.
It's just playing the cards now for the rest of my life.
No, it's really incredible because had you had the perfect body, perfect childhood, perfect mom, perfect dad, you would not be the amazing human that you are. Yeah. Like your thought process and your why and your maturity and what you've been through. One thing that I know through my own life, and we call them shadows. I have a men's group. We meet twice a month on Thursdays, and we talk about things that we're not taught as men, that men don't cry and men have to stand alone and you have to have all the answers and everybody's counting on you and there is no help and no one's coming to rescue you. And it's really all BS, that there is stuff out there. But one of the things that we carry are shadows from our past. And I couldn't get the love of my mom and dad, no matter what I did. So I did everything. I went out and I raked leaves and I shoveled snow and I would get money and I would ride to town and on my bicycle and I would buy my mom some gift. And by the time, she was old, she had this whole big display case and she had Alzheimer's. And I used to go into the house and I'd say, hey, Mom, where did you get that beautiful Last Supper set? And she'd go, oh, I don't know. And I go, I got it for you. I was so, but that shadow was, I wasn't worthy of the love because no matter what I did, I couldn't get the love that my younger brother had. And you are already aware that that shadow haunts you. Like as a sophomore in college, when that girl walked away, you were right back at 3 years old. Yeah.
Yeah, and especially like we talk about, when her and I broke up, right? It's all about mentality. And that's how I, talk to people about life in general. It's how you view it, and I think that the problem with that and why I reacted, so poorly to, her decision was it was my fault. I wasn't putting effort in. And to sit there and say, okay, she's gone, but it's my fault this time, right? And to have those, abandonment issues and saying like, oh, this one's on me. I didn't do what she asked. I didn't do this, but you learn from it.
Right.
You learn from your things that you've done wrong in life. And, I said, okay, well, I know what she asked me to do. So now when the next one comes around, I'm going to know exactly what to do. Still don't know what to do, but
neither do I.
Yeah,
so.
Neither do I.
Yeah. My dad said if you figure that out, you'll make a lot of money.
I will help write the book.
Yeah. But like you said, with the shadow, and it will always be there, right? Some days it comes up, and you're just whatever, and I've always dealt with it, like I said, on my own. And when I talk about things, whether it's this or maybe other things pop up, with work and stuff like that, I've always been the one to just turn back to me, right? Go back to myself. I'll go on the boat for 2 hours and I'll deal with it then, right? I'll always just talk it out in my head. If I got through this for 14 years, I can take this. And my college essay was about the island school. So I went to school in the Bahamas for a little bit. And in the morning, we had to do this thing that's called a run swim. So we called it AMX, and it's quarter-mile runs intertwined with, you're swimming across these little canals, right? So we'd run across, you'd swim, you'd get to another part, you'd run across a little bit, and you'd swim again, and there was this seawall there. And it was above your head, you have water up to your waist on a high tide, and you have to climb up this seawall. And there's some nasty barnacles and urchins on it. And the first time, you go up, you cut yourself, you fall back in the water. And, people, they lift you up, they push you over. And at the end of my time at the island school, we had the monster run swim. It's a 4-mile run and a 2-mile swim. And that last time was I faced the wall alone after doing it every day. And that was the first time that I was able to get over the wall alone. And when I wrote my college essay, I wrote it about what I'm telling you. The wall is my life. And the barnacles and the urchins was my birth mother, my birth father. Everything that I went through for 14 years. Cut down, people picked me up and pushed me over. And I ended it with, whatever, or something around these lines, whatever comes next, I'll be ready to take the pain and persevere. So that's the way I live my life now. Whatever comes next, I'll be ready to take it, and we'll get through it. Yeah.
So first of all, you need to write a book, and you need to write it about that.
Yeah.
And you need to be out doing inspirational speaking because you are inspirational.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
you
you.
are.
And I'm not just saying that.
Yeah. Oh, no, it's very true.
Yeah.
Look, you made me get my dude Kleenex all ruined. No, it's awesome. And I love your attitude because life it's not a straight up or it's not a straight line. It's like walking through the mountains.
Exactly.
And sometimes you're in the valley and sometimes you're at the top.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're in the valley, you don't have to, you said it, you have to keep walking. I tell people when you're lost in the woods, how far into the woods can you walk? Mm-hmm. Well, you can only walk halfway because then you're walking out. Yeah. But you have to keep walking.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you have definitely kept walking. It's more than impressive.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you.
I thought that going into this, that I thought soccer helped you out more, but come to find out fishing and your dad helped you out probably more than anything.
Yeah.
And probably the time together is what I'm getting at. The fishing with him together put you miles ahead of everybody, right?
Absolutely.
Because that magic time on the boat with him and just fishing with him, you picked up so much knowledge.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You don't even realize it. You know what? You just have this wisdom that's amazing. That's, it's so impressive.
So soccer did help, and I've, talked about this with people before, and I said, playing soccer was the only 90 minutes I felt normal growing up. When you're on the field, you're not viewed as the kid with one arm. You're viewed as a player, right? As a number. And that's why when, I, chose not to play, after pretty much high school. And I was fine with it because I had other options. And I always had the thought in the back of my mind, like, should I at least try to? And when I lost that and then and then went through that stuff in my sophomore year of college, my first thing was I have to go back to it. This is me, right? I started playing when I was 3 years old.
Wow.
I was practice every day, tournaments on the weekends, games in high school, throughout the week. And, it was my whole entire life. And so I talked to my parents and I said, look, I want to get back into playing, so I actually ended up moving home my junior year of college. So I was taking class online and I, was like, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to move home. This isn't for me anymore, right? There was a lot of, it was expensive to go to that school. And I was, when I was making this decision, my whole thought process was, I'm going to miss going out with my friends, not the education. So I said, okay, it's the smart thing to do. so I moved back home, and about 6 months later, I started to really pick it back up. I was already working pretty much full time, school, and I saw a future there where I'm saying, oh, I'm already working. I'm, almost done with school. Maybe, soccer's not the right idea. Maybe I made the right decision just by moving home. And in 2023, this was September of 2023, I really picked it up again. And I started going at it and going at it and going at it. And one of my best friends, he plays baseball in Ohio. And I always told him, I said, man, why are you moving from here to Northwest Ohio? You're in the middle of nowhere. It's freezing. Why would you want to move up there? You're living next to Toledo. Like, there's nothing to do. and he was like, yeah, man, whatever. And he texted me in November of 2023, and he said, hey, man, why don't you reach out to the Owen soccer coach? I said, okay, you know what? Why not? So I reached out to him, got a verbal offer pretty much right away. And, I talked to my parents, and I said, look, like, I always said I can live somewhere cold. I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to play soccer, and this is where I want to go. And they were on board with it. So after that, it was in the gym 5 days a week, on the soccer field with trainers 5 days a week for 7 months straight. It was a lot. Plus, I'd go down to West Palm. That's where I trained for soccer. I'd go down there at 9 a.m., go there from 9 to 12. And then I'd have my personal trainer at 1:30 to, 2:30. And then I'd have work from 4 p.m. to 11 p.m. And that was, pretty much, 5 days a week. And I move up there, and I kind of found that purpose again. I fell back in love with it, and I realized, like, okay, this is what I want to do. Move up to Northwest Ohio in the summertime. I moved there in July, and it was beautiful, right? It was nice. I lived in Perrysburg, Ohio. They have the river, the Maumee River there. I was like, man, this is great. I'm playing soccer. School's great. I have 24 friends on the team that we all hang out and do stuff together. And then the wintertime hit, and
Holy Toledo.
Holy Toledo, yeah. I adopted a dog. His name's Colt, and he was 4 or 5 months old at the time. And it was about 12:30 in the morning, and he got up, started pacing around. I was like, oh, he has to go outside. I look at my phone, it says it's -10. And that was my decision right there. I say, you know what? So soccer season was over. I went.
Yeah. So you have common sense.
Yes. And I met my girlfriend up there, and she actually moved down here. And she would always hear me talking about fishing and home. And, I'd talk to my friends on the phone, and they say, oh, man, I just went out and caught tarpon at the bridge during the mullet run. I'm like, oh, man, I'm looking at a cornfield. And so over the summer, I got offered a job as a yacht broker, and I was going to go back up there this year. And my parents said, are you sure you want to give up soccer? And I said, yeah, but this time, I'm good now. I'm good to do it. So over the past few years, everything has, gone from, like you said, your highs and your lows. It went from a pretty low to now, it looks like it's plateauing pretty high. But I know, things happen, but having that mentality of getting through anything and always moving forward and always walking, like you said, I know.
Well, you have the right philosophy. And, one thing that I say ad nauseum is the universe brings us exactly what we look for. Mm-hmm. And when we look at the dark grows. Yeah. And when we look at the light grows. Yeah. And you definitely figured that out a lot earlier than I certainly did, and a lot earlier than most people. Most people never figure it out. Yeah. They fill themselves with negativity. They're on their phones watching who's doing what and who's in the political and who's going to screw who over, and everything is doom and gloom. Yeah. Or you just look at the world that you're in, the part that you can control, and I mean, look what you've done. Yeah. No, so are you still doing the yacht brokerage?
I am.
And how's that going?
It's good. So I have to wait for my license. Okay. So you have to be licensed to sell 32 feet and above. And that takes a while because you're dealing with the state, fingerprints, all of that. But no, it's right up my alley. I mean, I grew up on boats. I grew up in Stewart. My whole life has been on a boat. Some of my best memories of my life are, fishing. And when I talk to people about, the yacht broker job, and they say, why do you like it so much? Because it doesn't feel like work. I get to talk about boats. I sit on the computer and scroll through listings and, put people on the water. and try to have them get the same experience as me, because fishing to me, like I said, it has always been, my happy place. That's, my go-to. And when I go fishing, and I hope that when people who fish, I know that, catching fish, they enjoy it. But I hope that everyone realizes that catching fish isn't the reason why you go,
Right. No.
And it's, you're out there, you're on the water, you're in nature. Catching a fish is just, it's a bonus.
It's the bonus. Exactly.
It's the bonus, some of my best memories on the boat is we didn't catch anything. We're just, my friends were having a good time. And of course, there are other times where we can't stop catching the fish. But for those, whether you're out there for an hour or 8 hours, when you're offshore and your phone doesn't work because you have no service. And, a few weeks ago, I went offshore. We were 15 miles out. We were pretty far out. And we're in the beautiful dark blue water out there, like near the Gulf Stream. And you can't see shore. Your phone doesn't work. And, in my head, I'm like, we don't even care if you catch anything. You look around and you say, this is why, you do it, because for these next 6 hours that I'm going to be out here, all of it goes away. The only thing I'm focused on is whether there's, seaweed up there or something like that. So no, fishing for me and the yacht broker job, all of that comes together. And I like being able to, have people experience those things, whether they just want to go to the sandbar or whether they just like to fish. It's a good job.
No, it's you hit it right on the screws. When I was young and I had a small business, my very first business, and I would feel overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. I'd have a day where everything was going wrong, and I would go out, not tell anyone, and I would jump on my boat, and I'd go out on the water, come back, finish my day. But when I would go home, my wife would look at me, and she'd look me in the eyes and go, "You went on the water today." And I'd say, "How do you know?" And she goes, "You have a different look in your eyes." Like, it just brings a calmness, a closeness. Peaceful, really peaceful.
No, it really is.
And one of the things that my dad, God rest his soul, always said was, if you find your purpose, your gift, you never have to go to work. Mm-hmm. And you're pursuing something that you're so passionate about. And when you're working with people, they're going to pick up on that passion. And it is infectious, just like a negative attitude is infectious. You put one negative person, if we're a 4-man team, and I'm going to pick on Seth. Seth is a plant, and Seth is going to poo-poo every idea. We're going to be dramatically less effective than a 4-person positive team. And you have it, man. That's all I can say, Ethan. You definitely have it. And you're on a great track.
I fishing, boating, all of it. And initially, I actually wanted to get my captain's license to be a charter.
I could see that.
And, I fish all the time. But with how things are changing, especially in the river and in Stewart, things are just so different now. And I'm friends with a lot of charters. And I do see, like, that's work. They go out there. If they don't catch anything, they get a bad review, And I said, I'm not doing that. I'm going to fish for fun. But I'm gonna put someone on a boat so they can go out and do it. Yeah, so that was my decision.
My son was an incredible cook. He loved to cook. That wasn't his job. He just loved to cook. I mean, different level. He's, there's people that can taste wine and tell you all the things. Yeah. I taste wine and I taste wine. You could give me Boone's Farm or you could give me a $1,000 bottle. I'm not going to know the difference. Well, he made the decision to become a chef. And he absolutely, after 5 years, never wanted to cook again. Yeah. And he said to me, "Dad, this destroyed my passion because everything is judged, and you're not doing it to you. You're not doing it because you love it. You're doing it to serve the customer, and the customer. You could work your heart out, and they could just be like, I hate this." Yeah. And he left that. He went back. He's a high-end carpenter, and guess what? He loves to cook. Yeah. So it's so you are. For 23 years old, dude, you're light years ahead of the pack. I couldn't be any more impressed and happy for you.
Thank you.
So all of the negative that came in, and you have just taken it all, and that which does not kill me makes me stronger. And you were one strong human being.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I do. Yeah, it means a lot.
Let's just ask you a couple of fun questions. Okay. What's your favorite sandwich?
My mom makes a really good tuna melt.
Oh, I love tuna melt.
I'd say her tuna melt, but also a Philly cheesesteak.
You're playing my songs.
Yeah, I keep going, but I'd say a homemade tuna melt. That's my go-to. That's a good answer. Yeah, I love a good tuna melt.
Out of all the movies that you love, give us one of your top 3. I know it's hard to pick one.
That is really hard. I would say I like the Transformer movies.
Okay.
I do. I like the Transformer movies. Yeah. There are a few other ones, but those at the top, I could just turn on the TV and I'll play that. Like World War Z. I think I've seen it, 100 times.
Okay.
There's background noise because it's a great movie.
Well, there's, you have those. I have those movies that, if I'm kind of either depressed or I might be flipping through the TV and it's on and you can't not watch it. Like I always go to Robin Williams and Hook. When Amy comes home and I'm watching Hook, she knows that it's been a really bad day.
Yeah.
And I could probably reset all those. All right, if you could pick to be a superhero, what superhero would you pick?
I'd say Batman.
Batman?
Yeah.
All right.
I like the Batmobile. Yeah. I go with Batman. Yeah.
Okay. I think this is maybe I'm off on this. First electronics you bought.
First one I bought. First electronic I purchased was a PC. It was a gaming computer. But the first one that I remember was a Wii.
Was
Yeah, it was the first one. Or the Nintendo 3DS.
I thought it was probably something for the boat. That's why I asked.
Oh, no. There's a lot that goes into that. But,
I know, but I bet I know it was something for the boat. That's why.
And that brings me back to the yacht broker job.
Oh.
When you talk about boats, boat stands for break out another 1,000.
Yeah, it does.
Anyone could buy it, but the upkeep on a boat, it's a lot.
No, I remember my boat days, the 2 happiest days of a boat owner's life.
So you buy it when you sell it.
There you go.
Yep.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. What's your favorite? If you could only celebrate one holiday a year, what would it be?
I'd say Christmas.
Yeah.
Christmas would be. It just there's a lot of joy in the air.
Yeah. And once you get past that age where it's all about presents, I think that's when you really realize that it's about family.
Comes together. I always go to my grandparents' house up in Vero. The whole family goes up there, and for those few hours that you're there, everyone's happy, everyone's having a good time. The kids are there, they're opening presents, and it's great. And it just feels lighter in the air, happier out for the Christmas time.
Yeah, even the grumpy people are tolerable during
they're happy
the
on
holiday.
that day. They are.
That's awesome.
What was your first concert?
First concert was a Brad Paisley concert.
Oh my goodness! What a songwriter!
Oh yeah,
he is amazing,
and a great guitarist as well. Yeah, he's great. It was a great concert. Now I've gone to many after that, and we're going to see Tree Oak Revival. It's like a rock country in 2 weeks, and then one of my favorite groups of all time in December. We're going to see Creed down in
Hollywood.
Hollywood. Yep.
All right, and if you could sum up what you've been through, and what is the one statement or mission statement or thing that keeps you going? Like I have winners never quit and quitters never win. That carried me from the time I was in grade school. It was painted up in the YMCA and going through training in the military, going through places I didn't want to be, exhausted, and it was always winners never quit, quitters. What's your core that keeps you marching?
It's nothing changes if nothing changes.
All right.
I love it.
Yeah.
Nothing changes if nothing changes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I think that, anyone, no matter what you're going through, if you don't change how you approach it, your vision on it, your mindset on it, if you don't change it, it's not going to change. And, you have to keep walking. You gotta go through it. You can't let it go through you.
All right. Yep. Ethan, do you feel like we've hit on everything you want to? Is there anything else you want to wrap with?
No, that's great.
All right.
Anything you want to plug?
Manatee Pocket Yacht Sales.
All right. Manatee Pocket Yacht Sales.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And who are they going to look for when they go to Manatee Pockets?
So if you go in office, you have the upbroker that's there that day. So it, changes. But, you can call the office. You look at the listings. Each broker's listing is on there. And, great team. They're going to help you out. And Tom, who owns it, he's selling it to Mike. And his, saying is getting you the best possible price for your boat, not just, what price you're going to buy it at, but what price you're going to sell it at. And, we work really hard to make sure that both parties are happy. because, you know, it's a
Nice.
lot. You know, you want to make the buyer happy, you want to make the seller happy. And, you know, people are coming to you, they're trusting you. You know, we say it's like selling someone's dog. You know, people love their boat. They love going out on their boat. And we deal with a lot of different people, whether it's, you know, a lady and unfortunately her husband passed away and she has to sell the boat, right? She might not want to because it reminds her of her husband, but she's not going to use it. She doesn't want to, you know, pay for the upkeep on the boat. So helping people out, whether they just want to go offshore and fish or go to the sandbar, or, you know, they lost a loved one and it's their time to start selling some of their things. You know, we really help you. You know, you don't have to go to the DMV. You don't have to talk to anyone. It's our job to handle all that for you. All you have to do is sign the paperwork, call me. I'll, you know, tell you what's going on with your boat when we list it. If you want to see how many clicks it's got, you can call. And I'll tell you, oh, your boat's received 200 clicks, you know, or whatever. So just trying to make it as easy as possible for everybody.
So they can't work with you directly yet.
So if you have a 31 foot and under, you can.
There you go. 31
Yeah.
foot and under. You got to look up.
Yeah.
You got to look up Batman.
Yep. Yeah. I know.
He'll take care of you.
I'll help you out.
And how
Yeah.
much longer do you think until you're able to get your broker's license?
So I sent my fingerprints in a few months ago. Unfortunately, they lost them.
No.
So I had to go in last week and then send them again. So then they have to go through the whole application. So probably, you know, a couple weeks.
So
Yeah.
so I just have to ask you.
Yeah.
You send in your fingerprints. Do you have to send in a note that says this
Yeah.
is?
So when you go to the sheriff's office to get it done. And when I went there the first time, you know, they have to go on the computer and like amputation and like do all this. And, you know, and I walk back in there and the lady's like, "You're back again?" I was like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Okay, you ready to go through all this again?" I was like, "Yeah." Yeah, no, because, you know, the sensor doesn't pick it up right. But, you know, the people that I met with at the sheriff's office, the ladies there, they were understanding.
Super cool.
Yeah, really cool, really patient too.
Well, it's not like you're hard to get along with.
Yeah,
So
yeah, no,
you know,
no,
it's
they-
different when people go in
Yeah.
and go in with an attitude.
Yeah,
Or a
they're-
negative attitude,
yeah.
I should say.
Yeah, they were like, "Oh, we're sorry that it's taking so long." I'm like, I have nowhere to be. You know? Yeah, go for it. You know, let's stay here for an hour. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome human being.
Oh, wow.
Listen,
Just a
if you're
minute.
out there and you're listening
Yes.
and you have a story, everyone has a story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And when you're willing to get up and share that story, you are going to touch other people out
Mm-hmm.
there and encourage other people out there. So we're asking you to get a hold of us. We want to come in. It's pretty comfortable.
It is. No, it's great in here.
It's
Yep, it's great.
like hanging out with friends around the campfire. We'll make it easy. It's not live, so you don't have to be nervous.
Mm-hmm.
And it's seldom that we get somebody of your caliber. And I don't think
Yes.
I've ever met a 23-year-old
Yes.
that's
Thank you.
put his stuff together as well as
Thank
you
you.
have. And
Thank
it's
you.
been an
Yeah.
absolute honor.
Yes,
you.
it
Me
has
too.
been an honor. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Thank you. Thank you.
And as always, Seth, thanks for everything. that
Thank
you
Yeah.
do.
So.
Ivan's got the apron on, Harry's got his
Hello, we're recorded from Harry and the Natives Restaurant in Hope Sound, Florida. It's a family restaurant. My family's run it 73 years. It's an 85-year-old restaurant, and just come and see us sometimes. Thank you. This is Bob.
And we're upstairs in the Tiki Hut, so you can come in, and we'd love to have you come up and tell your story. I'm with O'Donnell Impact Windows and Storm Protection, and we do, I know it sounds confusing, but we do impact windows and storm protection. And our slogan is, and please remember at O'Donnell, it's our family protecting your family. So I promise you, if you use us, we'll never embarrass you. If you refer us, we'll never embarrass you. We get the job done right. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.